Welcome to another episode of Building Wealth and Mental Health. We have a special guest today, Lauren Alexander. She has a unique background. She has a background that we don't really think about in our society, working with children who may have been displaced, working in the hospital system, determining who gets care and what type of care. And now she works in a school system, and she's going to detail that it's not the easiest thing to get into the school system. So her experience, I think, is going to be really valuable.
Teach me something, Uncle Money.
So welcome today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
No problem. So as we go into it, please explain a little bit about what you do and the populations you serve today.
Okay, so currently I am a school counselor. I'm actually the 7th grade school counselor at the school that I work at. But before that, like you said, it was kind of a unique way that I got into school counseling. I graduated from Georgia State University. I got my degree in psychology and a minor in sociology. And so I didn't really know what I wanted to do. But I got into counseling through that avenue. And so I got my master's in mental health counseling. And then I started working in a variety of settings. So I worked in a hospital setting, doing a variety of different things. So I went into the homes to talk to the kids and their parents, kind of to help them to, make some better choices. And then to just get back on their feet, the parents. And I also did assessments for people that were in the emergency room who may have been having anxiety, or they may have had suicidal thoughts, homicidal thoughts, a variety of different things. So I assessed them and decided which kind of care they would get. So I did that. And I always wanted to be a school counselor. So for some reason, I went and took the test, and then I got into school counseling. So I worked in a residential setting as well. And that's where I got my start being a school counselor. So I did that, and then it led me into the public school setting. And so this is my 6th year as a school counselor. So it's been interesting.
What would you say is your favorite point? If you were going to sell somebody on your profession, hey, this is why we do what we do. What is the selling point of working as a counselor within a school system?
I love my kids. Like, they are a headache sometimes. I guess it's kind of like parenting. I'm not a parent, but I've heard people say, like, it's so rewarding, whatever. So I think that being a school counselor or a teacher, like an educator, period, I think it's pretty similar. I love to build relationships with my students. Like, I love to joke with them and laugh with them, but also like have those serious conversations. Like, this is what you need to be doing. Even though you're in the 7th grade, you need to be doing these things so that when you become older, like, it'll just naturally flow. Like, we're preparing you for life. We're not just preparing you for 7th grade. And I think that sometimes they don't understand that. So I'm kind of like pseudo parent a little bit. So it is rewarding to see them as they progress, and when they're doing things, or they're like, oh, Miss Alexander, look what I did, and look at the grade I got. So that part of it, the relationship building and just getting to know them and seeing them grow, it's like, I love it. I really do. Even on the hard days, I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't do this. But then when I talk to them, I'm like, okay, I'm here for a reason. Like, I'm a school counselor for a reason. Yeah.
So let's take it back, way back. Please describe who Lauren was before high school. What was your childhood like? What were some of your fondest memories?
Oh, wow. I loved school. Like, I was very, like, I guess I was a nerd. I was very nerdy I loved reading. Like, they had those things back in the day where you had to like read so many books, and I think you got like a pass to Six Flags or something like that. I was the kid that I was like, I'm getting my Six Flags pass or whatever. So I love to read. I love to write. And those are things I still love to do, but I love to do that. And I also played a lot of sports. So I played basketball, I ran track, I cheered, I played soccer. So I was very active. My parents allowed me to choose what I wanted to do. Like, you want to play this sport? Okay, let's sign you up. You want to do this? Okay. So I pretty much did a lot of sports. So that was pretty much me as a child. But my fondest memories are just playing the sports, being around people, and having fun, just being a kid. Yeah.
So you're going into high school. What were you thinking about as far as furthering your education? How did you select your school? What influences were happening to you at that point? And were you even exposed to mental health at that age in high school?
So I'm gonna be honest, and I tell my kids this too, honestly. I had no idea what I wanted to do. I didn't really have a lot of guidance because back then they were called guidance. We were called guidance counselors. We're now called school counselors. So back then, the guidance counselor didn't really do much. And it's not to be funny, but they really didn't. So, I had no idea what I wanted to do. I just knew I had to go to school because my mom was like, you have to go to college. Like, I didn't have any other option. So my brother went to school before I did. And so I was like, well, guess I got to, I have to go to college. And so I thought I was going to go to college to run track. But I changed my mind. I changed my mind because I didn't really want to do that. I was good at track, but it wasn't something that I loved to do. So I ended up at Georgia State. I was supposed to run track there. And I changed my mind. But my first year of college, my first 2 years, my major was undeclared because I was like, I don't know what I want to do. I don't know what career I want to go into. But I remember my senior year of high school, I took a psychology class and I actually just reached out to the teacher that I had. She won Teacher of the Year. And I just told her, thank you, because I really liked that class. So I took that class my senior year and I love like that was my favorite class, like of all time. And so when my major was undeclared, I was like, I don't know what I want to do. My mom wanted me to be a pharmacist. I'm like, I don't really want to do all that, science and biology. Like that didn't sound intriguing to me. And so I was like, psychology. And so I knew that I loved it. I loved, thinking about the brain and understanding why people do the things that they do. And so that ties into mental health because you're thinking about the brain and why people act the way they act or they respond the way that they do. And so I ended up declaring my major as psychology, and I was taking a lot of sociology classes as well because they're very similar. So that's how it ended up being my minor. But I didn't have guidance. My parents didn't go to college. One of my brothers did. So like I said, my mom was like, you have to go. Like, you don't have an option. You're going to college. And I thought I was going to be a medical assistant. I don't know why I thought I was going to be a medical assistant, but yeah, I ended up going, and that's how I picked my major and carried on into what I'm doing now.
So you decided you want to be a psychology major, but we all know that's not the end of the story when it comes to education in that world. Right. How did you decide what next? What is next? So you pick your major. Were you thinking, I'm going to work for a little while, I'm going to hop right back into school and finish my master's program? What happened next for you?
So once I finished my degree, I started to see like, what can I do? Like, I didn't know what to do with a psychology degree. So I'm like, okay, am I going to go back to school? And I was volunteering at a residential facility. And there was a lady there that she was a social worker. And I remember telling her, like, I'm about to go back to school and I'm going to get my master's in psychology and I'm going to do, like, telling her all this stuff that I was going to do. And she was like, that's not how that goes. Like, if you get a master's in psychology, like, these are the avenues that you can, like, careers that you can have. I always knew I wanted to help people. I just didn't know in what form. And I didn't have someone telling me like, this is what you need to do to get to wherever it is that you want to be. I didn't have anybody guiding me. So she was like, oh, you might want to think about like exactly what it is that you want to do. And when I seen mental health counseling, I knew, like I said, I knew I wanted to help people. I wanted to do school counseling. I don't know what made me pick mental health counseling, but I definitely have always wanted to be in the school counseling career. I just don't know what made me pick mental health counseling, but I picked it and I loved it. And so that's what kind of got me. I had to pick something because I couldn't just be have a bachelor's in psychology, and there was really no careers that I would have wanted with just that. I was gonna have to get another degree.
Was there any downtime in between you graduating with your psychology degree, then going into mental health studies?
There was there was a couple of years. I graduated from Georgia State December 2008, and I went back to school like June 2010. So it was a couple of years, and those it was a struggle. I'm not even gonna lie, because it was a transition and I really didn't know what I wanted. Thankfully, I was living with my parents, so they were a little bit like, okay, like get it together. And I not get it together, but you can get it together. I think that when people graduate from college, that happens a lot of times. Like you're kind of like, uh-oh, okay, I have my degree, but I can't find a job. Or, I've heard those stories a lot of times where it's like that in between. So it's like, okay, girl, like you have to figure out what you're going to do. And so I'm like, I have to go back to school if I want to make any type of money. Like I'm going to have to do something. So yeah, a couple of years in
Do you
between.
mind describing the jobs that you held at that time and what were they paying? Somebody with a psychologist degree, what were the jobs and what were you being compensated for those jobs at that time?
Oh my gosh, that's a great question. I'm trying to think of what I was doing at that time. I want to say I was working if I remember correctly, I was working at like a community service board type of job. So it's like a place where people come that don't have insurance or they don't have a lot of money. So they come there and they get the services that they need, whether that be counseling or med management. Some of them are like they abuse substances. So they come there for groups and different kind of things. So I was actually the clerk there. And so I had to they had to check in with me. It was crazy. I'm not gonna lie. It was nuts. Like, I don't know how people do that. Like, that is a lot. Um, so I was registering people, checking people in. And I want to say, no, that was 2010. So no, that was before I started working at the residential. So when I was getting my degree, that's when I started working at the residential. But yeah, I was a clerk at a community service board in Carrollton, actually. Yeah, and it was yeah, I wouldn't recommend. I wouldn't recommend. No, it was just a lot of work. It was a lot of work, but I did learn a lot being there, like learning about substance abuse and learning about all those things. So it helped me when I got my master's degree. It did help. I will say that.
Yeah, I know from my experience living in Atlanta in the suburbs, there's a different level of struggle when you talk about rural poverty and rural struggles. And I think if a lot of people, I believe, were exposed to that, I think we'll be a little bit more connected as people. So
Yes,
I'm sure your Carrollton experience opened your eyes to a lot of different things.
it surely did.
So we both know that grad school is not free. So what was your thought process on I'm going to grad school? How much is it going to cost? And also, which grad school should I go to?
Yeah. So I'm gonna be completely honest. I didn't think about the money because I was like, I have to get this degree. I should have in hindsight because my loans are ridiculous, but that's another story for another day. So I did online schooling because that was just easier for me, more convenient. So that's how I ended up picking. And I was looking at a few different schools, but I picked that one because of the specialty that they had with the mental health counseling. I think some other ones might have had it, but I went to Walden University, so that's where I ended up graduating from. And that's why I chose it, because of the convenience. And I knew that it wasn't gonna take me too long to get it. It ended up taking me a little bit longer, but that's how I picked. The money aspect, yeah, it was expensive. That's where the bulk of my loans are from, because it's online, it's a private university, and so when you go to those schools that are online, it's going to cost you way more than going to like a traditional in-person university. So that's how I picked. It was
Who
probably not the
guided
wisest. It probably wasn't the wisest way to pick,
you?
but yeah.
So who guided you to that decision? Because it's a private university, it's
Mhm.
online. So somebody had to give you the trust that this degree was valid and also that could be a good experience for you. So who was that person that put that bug in your ear?
Um, no one. I mean, I talked to one of my best friends about it because I think she had gone or she was going, but she went to another university. So she kind of told me her experience with that university. I ended up just picking one on my own. And I want to say back then, I don't think there were as many places that were offering mental health counseling at that time, because that was, over 10 years ago. So yes, now it's much more like people are talking about it. They're offering degrees and things of that nature because we're discussing it. But I think back then, I don't think there were a lot of options for me to pick from. But no one really guided me. I kind of did it on my own. I think that the person that I was talking about earlier, who was at the residential, she had a different type of degree, but I remember them talking about another school and I didn't want to go there. It was Liberty University, and I think I just researched, and Walden just happened to be the one that I liked the most out of all the ones that I researched.
So you've selected a school, you're going through the program. Were there any classes, anything that gave you an aha moment while you were going through your school?
So they made us do residencies. Like people think online schooling is like easy. It is not. Like you have to do even more work because you're not in person. So in doing the residencies and doing the classes, we had to like uh do scenarios and we had to record things. And I just feel like I kind of was like a natural, like it just came easy to me. Like it wasn't like, oh my God, I don't know what to say, or oh my God, I don't know what to do. It just like I said, I always wanted to help people. And I think I always was just like the person that like I'm just like the counselor. I don't know. I just always been that way with my friends, with everybody. It just naturally comes out. Like I think because I'm a good listener. And so in doing the assignments and not even the paperwork, I mean, not even the papers, but in doing the assignments where I had to do scenarios or we had to practice in front of people, like it was a natural thing for me. So I'm like, yes, I made the right choice in picking this. So those were probably when I had the aha moments. Yeah.
So you decided to go to grad school, but you also decided to work. What went into that decision making? Was it a financial thing? It'd be nice to have some income coming in. Was it well, I just don't want to do only school because I did that enough at Georgia State. So what was your decision making in working and also deciding which job to work while in grad school?
Yeah, I needed the money because I had bills. And even though I live with my parents, like I still had my own things that I had to pay for. I had a car and things that I wanted to do. So it would have been nice not to work, but I always did that. Even when I was at Georgia State, I was always working because my parents didn't have it like that to just be able to say, hey, don't worry about not working. I think my dad told me that my first year of college, and I was like, oh my God, I don't want to keep asking you for money, but that first year, my freshman year, I didn't work. But I have been working for so long, it was just like a natural thing for me to work because I needed the money. Like I gotta pay these bills. So working and getting a degree, I think that's just something I just always do because I just got a degree in May and I'm, working a full-time job. So I think it's just the mindset of balancing it. I didn't really have a choice. Like I had to work. So I couldn't just say, I'm just going to go to grad school and just focus on school. If I would have had that option, then great. But that's never like been an option for me. I've had to work.
So how did you decide on what job to actually work? Because there probably a lot of options that you could have done.
Right.
There's no limit to a lot of social work type jobs. So how did you decide that on that job, and what was that job?
So when I first started getting my master's in 2010, I think I was doing, yes, I was working at the community service board. So I was a clerk there. And then I knew that I wanted to like start getting into my field. So I knew that I was gonna have to kind of like work my way up, like entry level, do whatever y'all need me to do until I get my degree, and then I'll get something else. So I ended up working at the residential the first time. And so that helped me to see all the things that I was going to be dealing with. So it was a 60-bed unit, 20 beds for the girls unit. That's where I worked. 20 beds for a boys unit and 20 beds for a sexual offenders unit. So I worked on the girls unit. Oh. And every time I tell somebody that, they're like, oh my God, 20 girls. And I'm like, yeah. So, but I had to get the experience in working with them and just getting to understand like what happened, why they got there, you know, how can we help them, what we can really do so that they can get to where they need to be so they can leave. So a lot of them, it was different things. They were either there because something happened in their home with their parents or their guardian. They could have been a runaway. They could have been doing something like prostitution, using drugs, like a variety of things. And they came from a variety of places. They came from Rome. They came from all over Georgia. This was in Bowden, Georgia. So they came from all over. And yeah, so I needed the experience, and that was the way that I got my experience. So I worked there. And I think I worked there for the majority of the time that I was in school until the end. And then I started working at the hospital. So I basically just looked for jobs that were in my field that were going to help me to grow and to make more money. I'm not going to lie, but you know, entry level, you start out at the bottom, then you kind of work your way up once you get your degree. But that's what made me pick those jobs so that I can get that experience, so I can learn more, and so I can kind of figure out like, okay, like this is something that I want to do. So that's how I decided.
So help us all understand, if an individual needed one of those beds, those 20 beds that those young ladies occupied, how does one find themselves in that place? Like, what is the process? Because I think that's something that we don't get exposed to as far as the general population.
Okay, so say for instance, you have a young lady. We'll just focus on my unit, so the unit that I worked on. So say for instance, you have a young lady that, you know, she's continuously running away, she's getting arrested, she's on probation, she violates her probation. And you have to have, like, it has to be a paper trail. You can't just get sent to a residential. You have to be doing things like severe things, and you have to have consistently been doing them for a lot of time for them to say, we're sending you to a residential facility. Like, you have to really be doing a lot of things. And so they go to court and the judge says, you have to go here because you have been doing X, Y, and Z. And so they have to stay. And usually they give them a treatment plan and they say, you have to stay here for a year. Sometimes if they do everything that's on their treatment plan, or most of the things that are on their treatment plan, whatever the therapist decides when they get there, whatever their treatment plan is, if they do what they're supposed to do, sometimes they go home in 6 months. Sometimes they don't go home for a year. I think when I was there, I think there was somebody that was there for like 2 or 3 years because either he didn't have anywhere to go or he just couldn't get it together. So that's one way. Or it could be they have a situation at home and they're in defects custody, and like their parents they just can't get it together. They may be on drugs. It could be a variety of different things. So they get placed there until their parents can get it together and get back on their feet and do whatever they need to do in their defects plan in order for them to get them back. So a variety of things. And we had, you know, girls that were on drugs, like heavy drugs. I know one of the girls that I worked with, I think she was doing like heroin or meth. So like, yeah, you get it's very sad actually. You get some very sad stories, and some very like, they have a lot of things going on. A lot of them have mental health disorders. some of their parents have mental health disorders. And so it's just kind of like, unfortunately, like a little cycle. And so they keep doing the same things that they've seen or that they've been around. And they find themselves in those places. I will say some of them, now they're grown, they're adults now. I don't follow any of them anymore, I don't think, on my social media, but I've heard people say that there are a few of them that are doing great now. Like that was just a time period in their life. I don't know why, but now that they're adults, they have like turned the corner and turned the page, and now they're doing great. So some of them needed it. So yeah, I'm glad to hear that too.
That's interesting because that almost seems like it's not a prison,
Right.
but they are obligated to be there. Kind of teeter on that is, and it's not a formal foster home. So like, kind of explain how that fits in the world of, disadvantage versus punishment. Like, can you help reconcile us on that?
I can. So it's kind of like, okay, so it's not a jail because it wasn't gate, like it wasn't like if you go to like a youth detention center, there's a gate or there's bars, like they can't leave. They can't leave our facility either. It's locked, but it's less restrictive than a youth detention facility. So a lot of them probably were at the youth detention facility. And so the step down for them was to come to us. So like they might have gotten in trouble for whatever they did and they went to the youth detention facility or a jail for juveniles. They would go there and then they would come to us to step down. So kind of like a transition plan, even like adults, how they get that, how they go to a halfway house or whatever the case may be, similar situation. So they go from the jail, then they come to us. They have to stay for whatever time. They have to meet their treatment plan, and then they step down. Some of them may step down to a foster home. Some of them went to a foster home because they can't go home, or some of them went back to their parents. It just depended on their situation and what was going on. I think there was one girl, I don't think she could go back to her parents because I think that they were abusing her, sexually abusing her. And so she wasn't able to return home. And so she didn't understand that, but she wasn't able to return home. So they were trying to find her somewhere to go. So yeah, so that's what it is. They come down, it's a step down. So it's a less restrictive placement than the jail. Cause we used to take them on outings. We went to the movies. We used to, but you had to meet certain certain expectations in order for you to be able to leave and go somewhere. So
For professional thinking, hey, that's where I want to work. That's the area I want to serve. How do you succeed in that role? Like, what are the coping mechanisms? Because you're going to see a lot of things. And what is your practical measure of success? Because it's more factors than just having somebody to talk to.
Yeah, I would say anytime you want to go into anything counseling or mental health, like you have to have thick skin. And you also have to know how to leave the things there. Leave them at your job before you leave for the night, because there used to be like some very devastating things that we would hear from the girls, or like the parents would call or somebody would call and they would have a bad phone call and it would just be out of control. And you leave there and you're like, oh my God, like what can I do to help them? But it's like just being that listening ear, kind of like the same thing I'm doing now, because I have kids with similar issues, some very severe is what I discussed, some not so severe, but sometimes they just need like a sounding board. They need somebody like to just hear what they're saying, or somebody that cares, because they may not have anybody in their life that cares about them, or they could have said just the craziest thing to them because they have their own stuff going on. So they just need that. But you got to have thick skin. And you have to really enjoy what you do, because there were days I would tell my coworkers, like, I'm about to quit. Like, I'm leaving because I'm stressed. I'm in school, I'm trying to do this, I'm trying to get this experience, but like this is a lot to deal with because we had to put our hands on them too. Like if they did anything like fight or try to hurt themselves, and when I say try to hurt themselves, like kill themselves, like cut themselves or whatever, we had to like restrain them and put our hands on them. And nobody wants to do that to a child, but we had to, and we had to do that to make sure that they were safe or that we were safe. And so there would be nights when it would be like off the chain, like they would be doing crazy stuff. They would try to riot. It just would be craziness. And so I think having a good team that we did was good too. Like we had a solid team. We knew like everybody, we had each other's backs. We worked well together. And so I think that helped as well. Yeah, I think that definitely helped. But yeah, you got to have some thick skin. You have to. And you got to kind of have a poker face because they tell you so many things that you want to be like, oh my God, I can't believe, but you can't really like, that like magnifies it. So you have to learn how to like, when they say stuff, you have to kind of be like, oh, okay. I hear you. Because if you make it your facial expression or you say something, you're going to like exacerbate the issue or make it, yeah. I learned that in my counseling years. I've learned how to have a poker face when people tell me stuff.
So any advice you would give facility owners or even government officials to make the, let's say, work environment better for the counselors or the social workers that are in the facility? Because hopefully if you guys succeed, the kids will have better outcomes.
I would just say and they did that sometimes, like make sure that you're doing things, I guess to boost the morale or to push self-care, like, make sure that they have, the days off that they need. Don't call them on their days off. Like, thank goodness that they didn't do that to me, but I know people that were supervisors and things like that, and they would get calls like all the time, anytime something was going on. So it's like you're never removed from it. And so that can drain you and that can stress you out. So I think there should be a balance of, when you contact someone outside of their work hours, and just implement things around the facility, like have like, I don't know what you can have, like give them treats or, let's go on an outing or let's do a bonding activity, but make sure that everybody can participate because that facility is 24 hours. So you have people that work in the morning. Well, usually there's one person, a unit that works in the morning. Then you have overnight shift. And then you have the second shift, which is like the busiest because they're they got to eat, they got to get out of school and things like that. So even on the weekends, so it's like they never close. So you need to make sure that you're giving your staff a way to be able to have like an outlet or a way to be able to feel appreciated. Like, I don't know, a treat or a social or just something that makes them understand like they're valued. And if they feel like they're valued, then they're going to give you like the best work that they can. Yeah.
So you've done let's say you're done with your mental health program. What happened next? What was your next job? How did you decide on what the next job should be? Like, what were you going through at that time?
So when I was at the residential, I left. I was still in my program because I graduated in 2013. Oh, that like lined up. So right when I was about to leave, or no, I left and I got my job at a hospital in December 2013. And so I had been trying to get into this hospital for a long time. Like I had applied and for some reason, they didn't pick me. I don't know if it's because I didn't have the experience, but once I got my degree, it was like, oh, we're going to hire her. So I knew that was going to be something good for me because the hospital has so many different ways that you can go when it comes to mental health. I knew that it was going to be something that was going to like broaden my horizons. And I knew that I needed an internship in order for me to, get into my work field. So I started working at the hospital and it was great. It had its moments, but it helped me to get like the hours that I needed for my licensure. because I'm a licensed professional counselor. So it helped me to be able to get those hours in order for me to be fully licensed. So I started working on, they call it, it's the IFI team. It's an intensive family intervention team. And so there's 3 people that are on the team. We have it's a lead counselor, and then there's 2 other members. So myself and another girl, we were on the team. We go into the homes and we do intensive therapy for, it just depends. If the parents need it, we do it for the parents. We do it for whoever the identified client is. And so pretty much wraparound services for them. And so we go in 3 to 4 times a week, sometimes more, depending on if they have like an issue. So it's very intense. So I did that for maybe like a year or 2, I think. And then after that, I went to another position within the hospital. And that was what I was saying earlier about where I talked to the clients that were, or the patients that were in the hospital, to decide if they should go inpatient or if we should just give them outpatient services. So, and I did that for a few years before I moved on to something else. And I worked for an insurance company before I went into school counseling. So just everything that I did, you know, it still was dealing with mental health. Even if it was like in another realm, it was still dealing with mental health because I knew I needed the hours, and I knew, like I said, that was going to help me to really see like, oh my gosh, this is what I want to do. This is my career. Like I want to, you know, stick to this. So that's how I decided with my jobs. Mm-hmm.
So you're in the hospital. Any advice to give somebody who wants to be in mental health but work in a hospital setting?
Mm-hmm.
What is the best way to get in there, obtain the job that they want? What is it, the networking requirements? Is it purely based on experience and having a necessary background? How would you advise somebody get into a hospital that they want to work in?
I would say, so for me, like I said, I just kept applying. I didn't know anybody. I didn't network with anyone, but I think that would probably be a good idea to, with any job, like reach out to someone, email someone, contact someone. If you know someone that works there, like ask them, hey, can you put in a good word for me? Take your resume up there, whatever you need to do. And in hindsight, I probably should have done that. But I just kept applying and I kept applying. But I would say that, like, contact someone, call them, send an email, go up there, whatever you need to do to be able to get in. Because I've heard people, when I tell them that story, like it took me forever, they're like, well, I just applied and I got in. So I guess it just didn't work that way for me. But I would say do that. Definitely contact someone, call them, go up to the hospital, hey, I applied, or call HR. That's who you would probably want to talk to. HR, definitely.
And how was it going into individuals' homes? So you're leaving a hospital setting or a setting of traditional workplace, you're going into somebody's homes. Mm-hmm. You're seeing different things. What area of Georgia was this in? Because that dictates a lot. Like, kind of describe that experience helping people in their house, because we all don't live the same way.
Right. That's why I'm smiling. Yes, it was. So this was the hospital that I was working for, is based out of Carrollton, but they have different locations. So, they have a location, and I worked out of the location that was in Villa Rica. So we service like Haralson County. Like I used to have to drive far. Like that's the only thing I will say that I wasn't very fond of. It was a lot of driving, like a lot. But the homes, for the most part, everybody was pretty well, like they took care of their homes and themselves. But we did have some very nasty homes that we did have to go into that I was not very happy about. So I just had to make sure that I didn't really take a lot of stuff with me when I went into those homes, because I knew that it was nasty, and I knew that I didn't want to touch much. So that was a very interesting experience. But most of the families that we worked with were very reasonable. They worked with us. They were like, come in, whatever you need to do. because a lot of times that was part of their plan of like, they don't want defects involved in their house, or, they just want to be done with everything that continuous us coming back and forth. So it was a lot of driving, and it was some nasty homes. But overall, I would say the good outweighed the bad for me. And we did get to go into schools and things like that. So that allowed me to kind of talk to some school counselors and kind of like, pull some little nuggets from them, because I knew that was what I ultimately wanted to do.
So within the hospital, you switched jobs. Is that something that you applied for, where they say, hey, Lauren is killing it out there, we want to promote her up? Like, how did that transition happen within the hospital?
Yeah, so I was working on the IFE team, and I was doing great, and I was doing fine. And I think I told my boss, because you're working in a job and you don't want to just apply for something and they don't know. So I think I told her like, hey, I'm interested in this assessments position. And she was like, yeah, go for it, apply, whatever, And so I applied, I interviewed, and I got it. So it wasn't that hard of a transition. It was just that I was going to be doing two completely different things. So I'm going from, well, not two completely different things. I'm going from going into the homes, meeting with younger kids a lot of times. So like elementary school age, all the way up to high school. So a variety of different ages. But when I started working in the assessments department, yeah, I really enjoyed doing that as well. Because I got a chance to still talk to people and still like kind of help them. It was over the phone. And I kind of worked like a nurse. So we had to work three 12-hour shifts. So we worked from 7 to 7. And so, I got a few days off, so I kind of enjoyed doing that. And it was more money. So that was another reason why. I know that they always say, don't do it for the money, but I had bills to pay. So it was a raise from what I was doing, going into the homes, to going into the assessments department. So it wasn't a hard transition as far as with the job, because it was the same hospital. But for me, yeah, I had to learn a lot of different terminology, because we worked with psychiatrists. And so some of them talk fast and some of them say stuff. And I'm like, I had to learn a lot of medical terms, because I'm like, I don't know what that stands for. So it helped me to learn more. It kind of like stretched me. So I'm glad that I did that. And like I said, I was able to get my hours to become fully licensed. So it definitely had a lot of benefits.
Explain your journey of obtaining your licensure. You
Mm-hmm.
need so many hours, you have to study for the exam. Like, what was your journey, and what maybe potentially made it unique?
So when I was at the residential, I worked I didn't say that. So I worked at the residential twice. So I worked there when I worked on the unit. When I said I worked on the 20-bed unit, I left and I came back. And so when I came back, I was what they call a community support individual. And so that's like the person you're kind of like a mentor to the kids. So I had them on all the units at that point. So you're kind of just trying to help them, another support, basically. Like they need all the support that they can get. And that's what I was doing. So I did my internship there. And then when I left, I was what they consider in Georgia a LAPC. So that's a licensed associate professional counselor. So when you're that, you have to sit under someone that's fully licensed before they can sign off that you can become a LPC. Like before they say she's done everything, she's gotten all these hours. So I finished that at the hospital that I worked at. And then once you get that, you have to apply. So you have to apply for your LAPC, first of all. You have to spend money and apply for that. You get that, then you have to sit under someone, and then you have to apply for your LPC, and you have to take a test. Baby, that test, I'm getting PTSD thinking about it. But it's like 200 questions. It's at a computer, and your score. I don't know how they do it now, but when I took it, you take the test, and when you walk out, you know what your score is. Whew. So I was just glad that I passed. Like they tell you as soon as you walk out if you pass or fail. And I passed on the first try. Thank you, Jesus. So you do have to pay, and I have to renew it every 2 years. So you have to do continuing education courses. So I have to take 35 credit hours every 2 years. So they audit you, and I got audited a few years ago. So they'll audit you and they'll send you something like, we need you to submit all of your paperwork for, the last 2 years. So I have to pay every 2 years $100. And if they audit me, I have to submit my paperwork. So that was my journey.
How did you feel when you became licensed? Was it a breakthrough moment? Was it, some type of validation? What was going through your mind when you became a licensed professional counselor?
I was like, oh my God, I did it. Like, no, when I passed the test, seriously, I studied for a long period of time. A friend of mine, there's a book that they tell you to get. I can't think of what it's called right now, but there's a book that they tell you to get in order for you to study for the test. So I had the book, I had the audio, I had my flashcards. Like I was like on it. Like I did that for a long, long time, like up until the test. And when I got to the test, I think I went through it. I changed some of my answers. They tell you not to do that, but I did because I was like, that's not right. And I passed. So it worked in my favor. But I was just, when they said I passed, it was just like, oh my God, I did it. Like I really did this. So I felt very accomplished because it was a goal that I wanted and it's a goal that I achieved. So I can say I'm a licensed professional counselor. Like nobody can ever take that away from me that I got that. And I guess it's like the same with my degrees. Like you did it, you made it through. So yeah. And sometimes I forget I'm a licensed professional. Like I forget it, even though it's like in my title, I forget like you're a whole, licensed professional counselor. But yeah, it was very rewarding once I walked out and she was like, you passed. It's like, yay. Then I called everybody. So it was rewarding.
So what happened after you worked at the hospital? What was your next job after that?
After the hospital, I worked in insurance. I worked at an insurance company. And I was, so I worked, in what they call like authorizations. So I was a behavioral advocate associate. I can't think of the name of the job, but I was the person that I would talk to facilities and I would determine, well, I wouldn't determine, but it would be determined if they would receive additional care based on the information that the provider would give to me. So I would authorize a certain amount of days. And then if it met, we had all this criteria that we had to follow. So if it got to a certain amount of days and they wanted more days, I would have to talk about it with the psychiatrist and say, give them all the information and give them whatever they needed. And they would decide, hey, you're going to deny this person. Hey, authorize the days. Talk to me about it again. So I did that for a couple of years. It was great money. But I felt kind of bad, not kind of, but I felt bad because some of them that were in our care were elderly. And so they would need the services, but based on the information that I was given, they would get denied. So ethically and morally, I didn't really like doing that. Because I feel like, we have a whole nother conversation about insurance. But I feel strongly that everybody should get it. I feel like it should be universal. Everybody should have access. We shouldn't be denying anybody any type of services. Because it's healthcare. Like everybody needs to be healthy and everybody needs it. And so I was doing the job and I was good at it. I was really good at my job. Like I was good. But I still, in the back of my mind, still wanted to do school counseling. And so when I was at that job, I was still looking for school counseling jobs. And I happened to get the school counseling job at a residential facility, another one. And that's how it led me into getting into the public school system. But yeah, I worked in insurance after the hospital.
So how did you get the job at the public school system? We noted that it's not the easiest place to get into. What are some of those barriers, and what did you do specifically to get the job that you have today?
So I think for me, the barrier was because I went a non-traditional route. So I didn't go to school and get my school counseling degree. So if I would have done that, like, and got my school counseling degree, done the internship in school counseling, then I think that my journey would have been different. But I went a non-traditional route. So I got my degree, like I said, in mental health counseling. And then I took a special education course, and I took the school counseling GACE. And so with me doing that, that qualified me to work in a school. But since I didn't have the school counseling degree, I don't think a lot of schools wanted to hire me, because I would get interviews and I would interview, but they wouldn't select me because the other candidates probably worked in a school or they interned at a school. So it looked better for them to be chosen over me. But nowadays, because like I said, with mental health becoming more not as taboo, or it's something that's being discussed, I'm a licensed professional counselor. So they're like, a licensed professional counselor and you got all this school counseling stuff. So it's like a 2-in-1. So when I got hired at the residential, I think it looked good that I had already worked at a residential. So I kind of knew what I was getting into, and my background with having my LPC and my school counseling, like it just looked great that I would be a good fit for that residential. And it was fine at the residential. It was just a lot because I was a school counselor for elementary, middle, and high. And I just had a lot of different jobs. Like I do now, the same thing, kind of. I just knew that I wanted to do it more so in a public school system versus outside in the residential. So I worked there and I kept applying to public schools and kept applying. And somebody took a chance on me, and they took a chance on me. And 6 years later, I'm still a school counselor. I haven't left.
How are you leveraging your experience? And you have extensive experience, serving different types of populations with different challenges. How are you leveraging that experience and applying that to the school that you work today?
Yeah, because like I said, I think, like I said earlier, the students that I work with are not that much different than the students in the residential. Like they have similar things that they go through, or similar characteristics, or similar backgrounds. Like some of my students, I don't know their full story. So I don't know if, their parents were on drugs. Some of them I do know, or if they've ever, been in prostitution or ran away or whatever. Like some of them I do know their story, but I don't know all of their stories. I just know that they're all kids. Like they're all kids that need like guidance, and they need someone to listen to them, and someone to like, hey, this is what you should be doing. Like direction. They need direction. And unfortunately, sometimes their parents are not the ones that give that to them, or they don't listen to their parents. Like most of us didn't really, like some of us listen to our parents, but most of us did not. So you always need like someone else that is on the outside to kind of like say, hey, like that's not a good idea, or hey, you would be good doing this, or hey, you should try to do this, especially when we see the things that they're doing at school. So I just try to push that, like, you can be smart. It's cool to be smart. Like I always tell, it's cool to be smart, So I think working with the kids, I just love working with kids. And I'm a coach too. So I just think I just love working with them because I wish that I had someone that pushed me. Like I wish I had that same thing when I was younger, because I feel like even though I'm a successful adult, I've accomplished a lot of things, I feel like I kind of went a long way to get there. And I think if I had somebody that would have guided me, it just would have been a different story. I needed like a role model, somebody to push me outside of like my family. I needed someone else. So I try to be that for my babies.
So this is an episode of Building Wealth in Mental Health. Any advice as far as wealth management, being an adult, having responsibilities that you would like to pass on to future counselors?
Oh, to future counselors. Woo! Okay, so whew. So being in mental health, like I said, like psychology and things like that, you don't make a lot of money. So it really needs to be something that you love because you don't make a lot of money. Now, there are ways that you can make money, like you can speak. I think you can write books. You can do, I haven't done all of those things. So there are ways that you can. But I will say, do not get into this career for the money. Like initially, don't get into it for the money because it's not there in the beginning. Now I'm doing okay now, but in the beginning, it's not there. And I think it depends on what routes you go. And I remember being in college and I'm like, I don't understand why these professors are like pushing their books on us and everything. But now I get it because they they didn't have the means. So it's like they had multiple jobs. They were professors, they were pushing their books because they didn't have the means. So I would say definitely get into it if you love it. And at the beginning, you're not going to be making a lot of money. You're just not. I'm sorry. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but you're not.
So what is next for you? You've been in your current role for around 6 years. You're a coach. What are you coaching? I'm curious.
I'm a basketball coach for it's a development program. So it's like a feeder program for a high school. So they're elementary to middle school age.
Okay. So are you still pretty good in basketball?
I'm okay. I don't really play with them. I just kind of like, cause I'm older, so I don't want to break nothing or, tear anything. So yeah.
So you roll the balls out and blow the whistle for half the practice.
We don't have whistles, but yeah, no, I just tell them what to do. I'm really like defense was always my thing. So I'm really on them about defense. But yeah, I don't run with them or anything. No, I don't do that.
Love it. So what is next for you? Are you going to spend another decade or two in the role you are today? I think you mentioned writing books and speaking is something that other professionals do. Like, what is next for you?
I am honestly trying to figure that out. I always wanted, like when I was getting my undergrad, I had a friend and we would always say we were going to go and get our doctorate degrees and I'm going to be Dr. Alexander. It's still in my mind, but I don't know if that's something that I'm going to do because if I did that, that would be something if I wanted to teach or be a professor or something like that. And that's not really something that I think that I want to do. So I'm going to think about it because I finished my EDS in May. And so I think I'm kind of like, I'm done with school. I don't even want to think about school. But writing a book may be something that I would want to do. I've always wanted to do that, actually. Like I wrote that on my social media years ago. And now talking to you about it, I'm like, so writing a book, I just don't know what it would be about, but that would be something that I would be interested in considering. But job-wise, right now, I'm gonna stick to counseling for now. I got a few more years left in me, maybe more than a few more years, but I am interested in possibly, because I'm in middle school, so I am interested in possibly doing another grade level, so elementary or high, trying one of those out. And if I don't end up liking it, coming back to middle school, but I'm open to doing that.
If you were able to go back and talk to yourself in 10th grade, let's say, you're just getting done with track practice and you walk up to your 10th grade self, what would you say to her? What advice would you give her? Like, based off your experience and what you've been through so far, what would you say to your 10th grade self?
I would tell me, to be confident and to embrace your smarts, like your ability, embrace your ability, because I was very smart, like I was very smart. I made great grades, everything, but I don't think I knew the potential that I had. And so, yeah, I would just tell her to be strong, to stay focused, and to focus on my grades, like seriously focus on that. Yeah, that's what I would say. And definitely the potential, because I don't think that I recognized it, because like I said, I didn't have that person, and maybe I did and I just didn't listen, but I didn't have the person that I felt I could listen to, or that like, hey girl, like do this, like listen to me, I'm trying to help you. I didn't have anybody like that, and I wish I did. So yeah, if I seen my potential, I think I probably would have had all kind of scholarships leaving high school, more than I did. So yeah, definitely see the potential and be confident.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Lauren Alexander, licensed professional counselor, for joining us with another episode of Building Wealth and Mental Health. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
Let's go, Uncle Money.